Bienvenidos! Today we're going to make a one pizza dough. This dough you can also make breads, baguettes, and so forth. But I make this dough for my pizza. This will make approximately 4 12-inch thin crust pizzas. You can also use this bread, this dough, to make focaccia bread and so forth. But tonight we're going to make it and we're going to let it rest. Usually I make it at night, let it rest for approximately 24 hours and use it the next day, and then refrigerate what I don't use for approximately a week. During that week you can take out a size of a grapefruit size of dough and use that dough for that evening for whatever. It could be pizza, focaccia, or a nice baguette. We start off with is 3 cups of lukewarm water. 3 cups of lukewarm water. I put in at least 2 tablespoons of olive oil, our lovely friend, a tablespoon of salt, and I use kosher salt. Sugar helps the yeast, so I put in a tablespoon of sugar, and it's 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. So 1 tablespoon and 1/2 of a tablespoon is 1.5 teaspoons, because it takes 3 teaspoons to make a tablespoon. So 1 tablespoon of yeast and 1.5 teaspoons of yeast with 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 tablespoon of sugar. We're going to have this sit. Again, 3 cups of warm water, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1.5 tablespoons of yeast, 1 tablespoon of salt. I use kosher salt. Then I use a cup of whole wheat flour, Mix that up. And it's 5.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I use unbleached. In this house, we use unbleached. It's the best flour. It has a better flavor. So we do 5.5 cups of this. You're going to have a total of 6.5 cups of flour. This will be a wet dough, which we will mix well in here, and then we will let it rest and use the dough. If you don't use it the next day, you can use it up. You can have it in the fridge for at least 7 days. And even if you want to, you can break it up and freeze for at least a week or 2. So, put in the last 1.5 cups of flour and make sure everything else is well incorporated. And then we're going to let this rest. I usually let it rest outside of the refrigerator for a couple hours, and then I put it in the fridge so it doesn't really expand, because if I leave this out, it'll really expand. You can also let it rest for an hour and then separate them into individual small little grapefruits and let those rest for 24 hours. But I pretty much leave it one size. Doesn't hurt to get your hands dirty, because you want to make sure everything's incorporated. So we fold in. As you can see, I'm tucking in. Flip it and fold in. Now that the dough has been mixed, it's elasticy, we've incorporated all of the flour. We're going to let this rest. Again, let it rest for at least an hour or 2 before you put it in the fridge for overnight. You can have it in the fridge for at least a week, and just cut out what you need. A good sized grapefruit makes a beautiful big size 12-inch pizza dough, nice and thin. And we will show you the different varieties of pizza we make here at Cocinarista Cook. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. Enjoy! We have rested the dough for 24 hours. And when we lift it, some of it will be stuck to the lid. And as you can see, when we put it in yesterday, it was just a dough in the center. Look how beautifully it has gone up. So Our dough has risen overnight, or 24 hours. And I'm not going to use all of this dough today. And yes, my primary use for this dough is for our pizza here at the household. So, we like thin crust. If you like it more bready, then you can use a third of the dough. If you like it really thick, you can use half of the dough, but that would be huge. So I usually make 4 pizzas out of this. You can even make 5 if you want to. Just putting some flour on the side so I can loosen it up. And notice how it deflates a little bit when that happens. So, I'm going to use a handy steak knife or a serrated knife and just cut it straight down the middle. I always use flour to help. And then from that half, I'm going to cut another half. So, there we go. It's nice and elasticy. Flour your surface. Making pizza, you're going to make a messy kitchen. We have the oven preheating at 400 with the stone pan, and then I have another stone pan. I also have a pizza palette to slide them off and on, but when I'm inside the house I just use this. I have another pan and I cover it with cornmeal so it can slide right off. I have several cheeses, some tomato sauce, some pesto, and we're going to have some fun with pizza today. Make a perfect rounded pizza. We do it as if we were taking care of a square. So here's a nice square, and we just go from corner to corner and side to side. Don't press too hard because you don't want to deflate the natural airs from the pizza. But it's nice and elasticy. As you can see, as it opens up, it stretches back. We let the pizza rest from us stretching it out. We're going to prepare our toppings. We're going to let this rest on our stone there. We're going to slice up our red onion. We can do lots of things with pizza. For mushrooms, you can use a variety of mushrooms. Ooh. You can also get peppers. Our packaged shredded cheese, I sometimes buy, or splurge, some fresh mozzarella, which I freeze to help with the slicing. One thing, see, slices a little bit nicer when it's slightly frozen. And you actually can buy your mozzarella and freeze it. I've actually had this frozen up to a week. So, we have flattened out the pizza. We let it rest. Now we're going to prepare it. We sliced up some frozen mozzarella. Remember, you can buy and freeze. We have some mushrooms, red onions, and peppers. We have some sauce and our pesto, which is homemade here at Cocinarista Cook. Remember, Cocinarista Cook, pesto. Before I throw the pizza in the oven, which has preheated to 400, I always put a little bit of olive oil. And then we're going to take some, get messy here with making pizza. Do everything by hand, like the good old days, like the good mamas, the Italianos, make a pizza with the hands. And no, it's not racist. I'm European. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we coated up this nice pizza. And marinara from the jar is just as good as homemade. Good pizza topping sauce. And Now we'll just put some of our fresh mozzarella. Now this is a thin crust pizza, and I usually bake it for at least 14 minutes until golden brown in a 400-degree oven. You can cook it probably for more or less, depending on you can cook it for more or less depending on what type of dough you use. If it's a thicker dough, more time, at least 20 minutes, 15 to 20. But since this pizza dough is a quarter of that big dough that we just made, we're going to cook it for at least 15 minutes. I do tend to take a spatula just to loosen it. And yes, I do have a pizza spatula, but right now we're not using it. Good horizontal slide. Sometimes some ingredients escape. Bake it in a 400-degree oven for a good 13 to 15 minutes. Maybe after 12 minutes we'll rotate it, and you'll have a great piece of pizza for your family to enjoy. Buon provecho. See you in a few. You're going to take it out and let it rest. Watch it, it's very hot. And there you have a nice homemade pizza. Enjoy! Buon provecho!